So my name is Nathaniel Holmes. I'm a trainer here at CSIS. I'm joined by Kyron and Marshall. They're also trainers. And luckily for us, we have backup. I see that Alex has joined us. While she may not choose to speak, Alex Manriquez, she's an analyst. She certainly jumps in the chat box and answers questions. And so this is end of year 3, reporting and certification. Um, Generally, we talk about the submission, certification errors, and results. Right. And so this training specifically designed for those data coordinators who are submitting data to CALPADS. And while the majority of focus of this training is for the LEA SIS data coordinator, it is pertinent that your SEDS data coordinator understands that they must review reports related to students with disabilities. We'll talk about that as we go through the training. And eventually your CELPA will need to review the report and certify end of year 3. Because it's the largest data collection of end of year, it's also good that your administration reviews the requirements. And so if you've printed out this PowerPoint, you can hand it off to them. If they come and listen, that's great. But, hey, giving them a PowerPoint and send it to them, they can at least go through the slides and try to get a gauge of the scope of work required. And so this training, as always, has specific objectives. And it's important for the new people to understand the intent of this training, because what you're looking for may not be here. This training is designed to help you identify the data required for end of year 3. We want you to be able to perform the submission through a batch file and upload process, or more or less know that you can resolve the certification errors, which we will spend a little bit of time on, and then analyze the report. So we're going to review the reports, demonstrate how to use the mapping guides, okay? If you're new, we'll describe and show you where to find the submission-related resources, the submission-related trainings. Training is really an annual update, whether you're new or you're experienced. The reporting certifications are just to highlight what is required, how you go about the business of getting the data into CALPADS, or our data population trainings, or our functionality trainings. And so we will demonstrate where to find those resources in this training. And so we have a major shift in focus. We try to update training as CALPAD changes. And one of the main tenets here at CSIS is that we want to help develop your skills, right? CALPADS is ever changing. And so we're going to move in a different direction as we develop our trainings going forward, and talk less about what you need and tell you the tools that you're going to have. What is it? A proverb, it's better to teach a man to fish rather than give a man a fish, right? When our trainings give you information and they're good for that moment, but ultimately we need to teach you how to go get that information and how to apply it. And so we're defining a set of skills that we think data coordinators should have to be successful. And so within this training, we'll discuss these 4 skills: coalition building, data leadership, project management, and critical thinking, right? And you can see the bullets. I don't want to cover each one line by line, but as you're submitting data for end of year 3, you're going to have multiple systems, right? You're going to have your SIS, how you track I don't know if your SIS is the only way that you track your students' language, but you have RFEP. So you're going to have, the LPAC integration. You're going to have to verify data with discipline data with your SEDS data coordinator, and they're going to be looking in their SED system. So not only do you have multiple systems, you have multiple people, but we like to call this a data ecosystem. You have to build a team of people to be resources and liaisons between each ecosystem. You also are going to have access to multiple systems. It's just not going to be your SIS and CALPADS, right? So you got to build a team. You have to build a coalition of those in the know and willing to do the work. You have to be a leader, right? Regardless of where you are. You may not be in administration, but because you have access to the data, because you're submitting the data, you're going to find, if you're new, you become an expert. You may not be the significant program expert, but you understand the data and its intricacies. And you're going to have to relate to your data stewards the importance of this data collection, where there's errors, why getting this data is failing. Those that are really good, those that are really experienced can tell data stewards the overarching expectations. This is something you grow into. Unfortunately, it gets thrust upon many LEAs. And so it's very vital that you just expect to become a leader and then you embrace it, right? And some of it is, regardless of your position, setting up a meeting and initiate shared information throughout the organization as it pertains to CalPADS, right? Even if it's going to superintendent and just advise them, this is what's coming. It's above my pay grade, but hopefully you can find the staff and alert them that we're going to be collecting work-based learning from here on out. I don't know where to get that information, right? That's just an example. Project management, again, is very important because we find that LEAs that are most successful don't just meet CalPADS deadlines. They are submitting and certifying data based on internal procedure and deadlines. They understand when the CalPADS data is due. However, for end of year, staff won't be available. So waiting to the end of July may not be prudent for your district. If you're a district that ends in May, you don't have to wait a month and a half. You can submit, certify, review the data well before the end of the month. However, if you're a district that goes all the way to the end of June, perhaps you don't make the initial deadline and your target is August. You have to understand the impact that working in August will have on your fall one next year, right? However, that has to be managed. Coordinating the people, setting up a calendar, thinking about the competing priorities is all part of the project management. And then where most LEAs start that become successful is critical thinking. CalPADS demands that you're a critical thinker, not just in reviewing reports during certification, which again, we're going to talk about, but establishing a methodology for troubleshooting errors, right? Knowing how to use the resources, going about it the same way. Some people find it easier because they're analytical thinkers. However, you don't have to be an analytical thinker if you have a methodology, if you have a process. And so that's why we like to review the different documentation. If you have a referential knowledge of each document, you can be successful at certifying and troubleshooting errors as they come. Ultimately, we want you to be able to populate your systems locally in anticipation of CalPADS requirements and not have these errors. So that's my spiel. Hopefully you understand the importance of why we're considering changing the type of training. And when we ask you to submit a survey, you can give us your opinion on that. It'd be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, this is the agenda. I really have talked long. I'm cutting into Kyron's time, but we'll have an overview. That will be real quick. We'll go into the data submission. That might take a little bit of time. We're really going to extensively want to talk about reports in the approval process, as this is reporting and certification, and then the wrap up, which is always contingent on how much time we leave ourselves. And so this is the overview, right? And so the data collected for end of year 3 has grown. Initially, it was student discipline. Now it was student discipline and student absenteeism. Then it was cumulative enrollment was added. Now we have the homeless program of last year, and new this year has been the reclassified RFEPs. The only thing missing is the graduation count, which is added as well in the form of 2 reports. You could think of the grad count as being part of the cumulative enrollment, but if you want to think of it as a separate requirement, that can be a 6th bubble, right, to consider. So end of year 3 is the largest individual data collection as part of end of year. As always, we have key dates. May 10th was the start of snapshots. So as of last Tuesday, you have reports, you have certification errors that you could start reviewing. The approval deadline is July 30th, and the amendment window is August 27th. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the end of year data collection represents the entire academic year. There is no census day. And so I want to leave Kyron to talk about the calendar as he chooses later. So we'll just move on. So again, we're going to submit student incidents, right? That's going to require the 3 files related to incidents: the sync, the SIRS, and the SOF. Then we're going to submit student absenteeism data. That's the STAS file. Then you need your SSID enrollment updates for cumulative enrollment. And as a requirement, you must exit students at the end of the academic year. That's also where we're going to get your graduate counts, We need the homeless program. So you're going to have to submit the student program file, or at least update the records to make sure all your homeless records have been updated. And then lastly, the student English learner acquisition file, the SELA file. You want to make sure you update that so we can have accurate RFEP counts. Okay. So as you can see, there's extensive data collection for this end of year submission. And so we want to lead into a section where we want to encourage and remind those what are the key resources. If you're new, we'll show you some resources and where you can find this information so you don't have to wait for training. If you want a more in-depth description, where you can go, right? Anytime you have a submission coming up, you should ask yourself a few key questions. Where do I find information about the data collection? Where are the key dates related to the data submission? What is my timeline? And how can I audit or track the task involved for completion?
Is that my cue, Nate?
Yes,
My
Kyron, it's your cue. Jeez.
Okay, so anyway, good morning, guys and gals. So as Nate was leading in, you have to know where to find resources in CalPads to be self-reliant and not just just send in a ticket and ask one question at a time. There are a lot of resources in CalPads that you could take advantage of. When I started in CalPads, the first thing I learned, thanks to Nate throwing me to the fire, giving me tickets a week after I've been hired, is that half the battle one would be if you know where to find information. So basically, it's not about what you know; it's about where to find resources. That's the key element with being successful in CalPads. So with that as an intro, I'd like to lead you into different resources you could take advantage of. Of course, if you're in CalPads, the first one to go to is under help. You have multiple sections here. You have the system documentation, which leads to the CDE's system website, CalPads website, as well as my favorite, which is the user manual, which leads us to the CalPads user manual. So in the user manual, let me just first highlight the CalPads user manual. So if you go to the user manual through help, or if you've already bookmarked it way ahead of time, we normally update this based on the submission period that we're in. So this year it's an end of year roadmap. And so we have all of these resources consolidated at your perusal. We have the end of year calendar, which provides you the different timelines that you need to be aware of leading into the end of year submission. We also have, you know, the cohort timeline. And then we have different you could also refer to the different CalPAS communications that is relevant to end of year that we've linked in this section. We also have, frequently asked questions for COVID-related issues like attendance, absences, those stuff, and some changes to CalPADs. And then there are some key reminders that you also have to be aware at the end of the year. So we have those things in here and some strategies on how to prepare for end of year submission, and also the recommended approval and certification based on experience and the different what do you call this changes in terms of requirements in the business rules this year. So those are just parts of this CalPads end of year roadmap. Another key thing here is your end of year submission checklist. Thanks to one LEA, they were able to create a checklist, which we just basically modified to make it, to generalize the process for all LEAs. If you download this checklist, it provides you, let's see here, this brings up quickly. It provides you of course, a spreadsheet, a checklist of the different things you have to be aware of, and for end of year submission. and it also gives a column of who's responsible and if it's done or not. So you could probably send this to your concerned departments this year for end of year one if you're reporting end of year one, end of year two, three, and so on. So you can assign persons here, and it gives this sense of accountability in terms of, okay, are the data available in Calp, ready to be uploaded? Is the process done? Is some of this information already in the SIS and ready to upload to CalPad? So these are stuff that you could pass on to your coworkers who are involved in CalPADS collection as well.
I don't want to break your flow, Kyron, because I
Yeah.
don't know where you're going next, but
Yes.
Kevin did ask, is there a master list of all the files needed for end of year three?
Yes. It's if you go here to the end of year roadmap, we've broken down the different submissions. So you have here files for end of year one, and you can just click on each one, which leads to the user manual section of this, which provides additional information and also a video and other related stuff that is related to staff demographics, for example. So here's one section that you could look at. Another one is if you scroll down to the bottom and go to the CalPADS file specifications documentation, you could take advantage of the CalPADS CFS docs and go to chapter 2.5. So it gives you all, general descriptions of what is expected to be submitted for end of year three, and what data are included, and what file types. So based on this, you should be able also to look at the formats of each file type. Let's just cover this, and be able to determine ahead of time what are expected, what are being collected, and what elements you need to prepare for. So you have your student offense file format, you have incident results, you have incident data. So all of these are available to you um, any time of the year. You can always just search because there are no major changes anyway in end of year three. You can just search any time of the year and just type end of year three roadmap, or go to the CFS, and you should be able um, to have to get that information way ahead of the end of year submission and be prepared to collect the data, or at least be able to prepare your staff in terms of the timelines that that you've set for end of year submission. So those are on the roadmap. Of course, most of the links here are sourced out from the CD's website. So we have here the same calendar if you go to the CD website. And then you also have communications, which is key to knowing what to prepare for and knowing what to anticipate in terms of changes in the business rules, changes in policies that CD has implemented. So in here, you have Flash. If you go to the CalPads CD website and go to communication, you have the Flash updates. If you're not able to receive, the CalPads Flash real time, you can always go here and click on the different Flash communications, like Flash 205, which basically rolls out or lays out the different changes and expectations for end of year. So you have here the rollout, the deadline, the rollout for work-based learning, submission functionality, and then as Nate mentioned earlier, you have your graduation rates and completer counts. So so guidance on how this report will be collected and reviewed, and then Another thing which is key this year is the extended assessment window and impact to end of year. So as you know, there might be schools in your district that might still be testing way beyond June 30 of 2021. And so if you've exited your student already, and those students are still testing, chances are they won't be able to test in for CASP because they will be taken out of the roster. So that's one key procedure that you have to be aware of. So make sure if you still have schools open beyond the reporting period, don't exit your enrollments yet until after all of your schools are done with CAS testing. That's just basically gist of this section here. And then, of course, some guidance with homeless. So the reason why I'm just highlighting this is that you don't just start fall one once a snapshot runs, once you have your reports and certification. There are resources that you could read way ahead of time. If you're new to CalPAS, these are things that you could, take advantage of. And then if you have questions with regards to this flash, then of course you can always send us a service ticket for clarification. Um, to emphasize my point, this was submitted or delivered April 20. There was one way earlier in September of last year showing anticipated changes for the whole year, including an end of year submission. So um, just to ride on Nate's emphasis on you have to equip yourself with all of these resources, with all of this knowledge. These are some of the sections in CalPads and tools that you could take advantage of way ahead of end of your submission. And so and so yeah. So other than this, refer to this section of the CalPads user manual to start with. If you're new to CalPads, this is a good start. Um, if you're confused of what to submit or what to do for end of year, this is a good start. And then, if you have questions, you can always send in a service ticket to clarify some of this that's in here and some business rules or some flash communications. So throwing it back to you, Nate.